thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe and see you next week. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spirit Talk, and today we are welcoming the incredible Hollywood Yates here. You may recognize Hollywood as Wolf from American Gladiators, his very notable singing career. He's an actor, stuntman, dancer, a prize champion bullfighter, works in the rodeo. He is the perfect guest for Spirit Talk because his whole life and career encompasses everything about the show. And so it's great to have you on here, Hollywood.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you reaching out to me. Been looking forward to doing this.
And before we get into like the minutia, the specific aspects of your life, which is mind blowing, one of the central themes I wanted to talk about today is this idea that you have this passion for everything you do, whether it's the singing, the rodeo, the acting, the fitness stuff with American Gladiators, all this stuff. At what point in your life did you finally realize that, hey, if I have a passion, how do I push this passion and just accomplish as much as I can in my life? Because you are very passionate.
I think I was just kind of born with it. I've been very fortunate that, I had a mother that was just amazing at pushing me and allowing me to, just kind of find my way through life. And if I had a passion for something, then she was 100% in and, followed me and backed me on that and helped me. All except rodeo. Rodeo, when she found out that I was doing it, I busted a tooth and, she was not really happy with my choice in rodeo. But over time, she's, come to see that I'm very good at what I do and have, made a great career out of it. But, it really, it probably started at 7. Elvis Presley had passed away. And I sat there and watched everything about that man on TV that day. And I listened to the radio and I was so amazed at how one man could affect, basically the entire world. And I knew that there would probably never be another man like that. But I was like, man, if there is, I want to be that guy. And so at 7 years old, I became an Elvis impersonator. And was singing in my grandfather's nightclubs and at school talent shows, and I loved it, and I loved the reaction of the crowd to what I was doing. And so I think probably at 7 years old I realized that entertaining and being able to change people's perspective, at least for a little bit of time. They might be having the worst day in the world, but for that moment that you can really capture and grab them and get their attention, you might make their life really good for a few moments. And if you string enough of those moments along, then it's changing the world. When
the shutdown happened, I don't like talking about it. I want to move on with my life. I know
Right.
most people do, but I'm in the security world, so I'm out here with bands and stuff doing these shows and seeing people react to music again, whether it's laughing with their friends, having a beer, crying to a certain song. The idea that the type of the music or the theater or the events, even the rodeo stuff
Right.
being taken away for those years, I don't think scientists, these doctors really understand how cathartic and healing these type of events are you speak of. And if you could kind of touch upon, like when you go through these last couple of years, are you still kind of like, man, like I need to get out there and people need to hear me sing, or I can make someone laugh, or how do you comprehend that whole thing?
Well, absolutely. Like I said, entertainment is basically all I've ever done. I've had little odd jobs here and there, my whole life, but not really. I've been a professional entertainer since 7 years old. And I've seen what it can do for people. And I've talked to people that, come up to you after a show and they're like, oh my God, that song you sang, I can relate to so much. And it made me cry. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it made you cry, and they're like, no, it was a good cry. It took me back to when I was a child, or, and so I've always known that, music and even acting, shoot, I'm probably one of the, toughest guys on earth, but I'm also probably one of the softest marshmallows on earth too. Like I will cry at the drop of a hat. on something that, like when I see what really gets me crying, is when I see other people realizing their dreams, or seeing something really good happen in somebody else's life. It just brings tears to my eyes. And when the world shut down for 2 years, I knew that was going to be a big problem, for a lot of people. So one, I didn't shut down. I just kept going. I found places, that basically told the government, screw you, we're gonna, keep going because we have that right. And I don't even look at it as we have that right because of the Constitution or anything. I have the right to do whatever I want because, God put me on earth. I'm not going to go into all that because I know people have their different beliefs, but I am here for a reason. I'm here to entertain people, to help people, find happiness for a few moments in their life. And I did. I toured, the whole time. I went to Sturgis. I went to, events that didn't shut down. But I did lose a lot of gigs. I lost about 90 gigs that first year. And what I did instead was TikTok. I had people for a year before telling me, "Oh, you need to do TikTok. You need to do," and I'm like, I don't want to do another social media thing. I'm like, I've already don't like doing social media because it just, I would rather just be in front of somebody live. Well, when all my shows are getting shut down and I'm still touring where I can, but it's like it took a big chunk out. I started doing these TikTok videos, and I mean, it took off. And so for a year there, I had I've still got 150,000 followers. I could probably have more, but I don't do TikTok every day the way I did when I was kind of stuck, right, being at home. So, but that was my way of reaching out to the world and still entertaining, was doing a TikTok. And I did everything on TikTok. I did, jokes. I did, just some of the voiceover stuff. I did a lot with my clown makeup on. I would pick up the guitar and, just sing some old songs. And so, there's several ways to go about bringing it to the people.
Right. You mentioned growing up in these clubs your grandfather owned and stuff like that. That part of your life at that young age, I mean, you see a lot of business dealings, whether they're good or shady, or you grew up in an atmosphere like that. Does that kind of help you understand as you get older, like how this stuff works, whether it comes to promoters or deals and stuff like that?
Absolutely. And I know you see it, because you work with a lot of these bands, doing security, and there are some amazing, amazing people in the entertainment industry that, are some of my dearest friends that I would, take a bullet for. And I know you would too. And then there's some shady ass people in this business that, I would give a bullet to. I mean, I know there was a guy I've known for years. He was a bar owner, and he's one of those bar owners that he only owns a bar to party and, be the big dude. And I finally, played his bar one night, and I got my check. I handed it to my wife because I had to fly out the next morning to go do a USO tour overseas. And I said, here, put that in the bank. I'm going overseas. I'll be back in a few weeks. I came back and my account was a lot less than it was supposed to be. And that check had bounced. And so I'm calling the owner of this bar, and I'm calling and no response. And I finally was like, okay, I know what his busiest night is, when he'll have a lot of cash on hand. And I went into his bar. I walked up to the main bar and I grabbed a shot down that. And as I'm walking off, the bartender's like, hey, you owe me. And I go, no, put that on the house. And I walked into the manager's office and I sat down, and he was like really surprised. And he's like, hey, what's going on? And I go, well, that check bounced. And he's like, well, I'll call. And I go, you know what? We don't need to even call him. I said, I've already tried to call him 5-6 times over the last 2 weeks. I said, you have a safe right behind you. Open it. And he opened it and he hands me $400 cash. And I'm like, well, that's a good start. And I put that in my pocket and I grabbed him and I walked him around to every bar in the club and made him pull money out of the tills. And so by the end of this, I walked out and my pocket is so full, it's like I can't even slip any more money into that pocket. And the last bar we went to was the main bar, and I go, Darden, I'll have another shot and a beer. And she puts it up there and she goes, that'll be, and I go, on him. And I drank those and then walked out. And, you know, of course, the owner calls me and is like, hey, man, you came in and robbed me. And I go, no, I came in and I got what you owed me because you wouldn't call me back. I go, but if you want to involve the cops, feel free to call them.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
of course he didn't because, but yeah, there's some shady people. And I have not talked to that bar owner in 20 years now.
When it comes to before you walk the stage or before you get in a bull ring or the rodeo or before you become Wolf on TV, is there, when you become these certain characters, do you have the same process for each person you kind of step into that role, or is it the same type of preparation in terms of getting ready to do what you do?
Yes and no. I mean, to get ready for a concert, it's more just warming up my vocals, going over my set list, figuring out, okay, this is what I'm doing. And I think a lot of it, has to do with once I start putting the clothes on and I start putting the rings on, and, it's like, it's just kind of the process of, this is me getting ready for this show. With Wolf, when I was doing Gladiators, and I'm a character actor, or shoot, I forget the term, method. I'm a method actor. And so as I would be driving to the deal, it's like I would just listen to some harder, edgier music. And then, or if, a lot of times they were driving me, but I would just put my earphones in and just listen to some kind of harder, edgier music. And then the second I got into the parking lot, I was Wolf. It's like I would have a smile on my face. I'd close the door and the smile was gone. It was like, doom. And I would walk in, and if I saw a contestant anywhere, I would start yelling. I would start throwing stuff and, telling them, get them out of my sight. I don't want to smell them. I don't, I just became a dick. and it worked because I had dinner with two of the contestants about, I think it was a year, maybe 2 years after. I was doing another television show where I was teaching a guy to be a rodeo clown, and he was out of shape. And so I was going to send him to Allie Davidson, who had won the second season.
Yep.
And she started Camp Gladiator. And so I went to dinner with her and her husband. Well, her husband was on the show as well. And as we're eating, she told me, she goes, everybody was terrified of you. She goes, like, everybody legitimately was scared of you. And she goes, even my husband. And I looked over at him, and he goes, dude, he goes, we all thought you were crazy. He goes, we thought you were nuts. He goes, like, we knew the others were there just playing games and, having fun. He goes, but like, everybody thought this guy's going to snap and kill somebody, and I was like, well, good. I go, then what I did worked, because I know that in sports, it's easier to win a game if you've already beat them before they get on the court or on the field, or, with rodeo. If you're already so worried about the bull that you're drawing, well, you're not going to do good. It's like you're already beat, the bulls beat you, and so that's what I did. I walked in, to the venue, yelling and screaming and just being the biggest asshole that I could be. And that way all the contestants were already scared of me. They thought, God, this guy's just, he's a lunatic. He's going to kill somebody. He's, and I was like, I wasn't worried about hurting. So, I was like, hey, if I, the producer came up to me one day and he's like, man, you need to calm down. And I'm like, I don't need to do nothing except do my job. I said, look, if I break their leg, I go, they have a great story for the rest of their life. I go, look, I fight bulls for a living. I said, I've had over 140 broken bones, 3 knee surgeries, a torn Achilles. I've been gored, had a bull run a horn 9-inch. I go, I'm not going to do that kind of damage to these guys. I said, I might break a leg or an arm. I said, and if so, they have a great story for the rest of their life that they get to tell their friends at every cocktail party. We
had Darren McBee on the show, and I'm a huge fan of American Gladiators, and a similar situation. I asked him, I mean, how did you create this character of Malibu? Because it seemed talking to him as a person, like you're a different character. So I guess when I saw you, I was just blown away when I saw Wolf the first time. I'm like, this is the first time I'm seeing another American Gladiator that is larger than life. Like everyone's obviously muscular and
Right.
oiled up. They're naked, they're super athletic, but
Yeah.
your trademark looks and the chops and the hair, like how much of that was, hey, you're hired to be Wolf, make this character your own.
Um, it I made that character. They didn't want to name me Wolf. Like at first, when we were first training, they wanted to, because I was a cowboy and everything, they wanted to kind of stick with that whole cowboy thing. So they actually wanted to call me Cowboy at first. And I'm like, well, that's not a gladiator name. I'm like, that's just stupid.
Right.
And then, then they come, Nitro had trained us. And so Nitro came up with, Bronco, let's call him Bronco. And they're like, yeah, we're going to call him Bronco. And I'm like, Bronco? I'm like, that's gay porn. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be Bronco. And so then I saw where they were trying to go with this. So I was like, just call me Maverick, and they're like, Maverick, you mean like Top Gun? And I'm like, no, you idiots. I'm like, Maverick, like, James Garner, like, I go, Maverick. I go, the gentleman in Texas who didn't brand his cattle was John Maverick. I said, and he was an outlaw because he wouldn't brand his cattle. I go, Maverick comes from the rodeo, from, Western heritage. I said, so call me Maverick, and they're like, no, it's too confusing. We're going to call you Bronco. And I'm like, no, I don't like Bronco. And so then they finally come to me and they're like, we're going to call you Chopper. And we're going to have you come in on a Harley. And I'm like, you're going to have me ride in on a Harley in spandex? Really? I go, whatever. And at this point, I was the only one that didn't have a contract. And I'm like, look, call me Sue, put me in a dress. I don't care. Just give me a contract so I know that I have a job, so I know I'm getting paid. I go, whatever. Well, I went home for 3 days. We'd already been there a month just training. And so then they sent us home over Thanksgiving. And I got home and I had a picture of my old dog. She was a half Malamute, half wolf mix. And her name was Taz. And I was like, Taz. And I'm like, well, now, Tasmanian Devil and Taz from ECW. I'm like, and WWE. I'm like, I can't go with Taz. And then I kept looking at her and I go, Wolf. I was like, Wolf would be cool. And so I went back and I go, all right, I got a name. And they're like, well, we got a new name for you. And I'm like, oh my God, what's this one going to be? And I'm like, all right, what's yours? And they're like, Wolf. And I go, done. And they go, well, what was yours? And I go, Wolf. And they go, well, how'd you come up with it? And I told them, and I go, how'd you come up with one? And they go, well, we're watching your training tapes and you're like this, just rabid Wolverine, but we can't use Wolverine, because of Marvel and everything. And they go, so we were like rabid wolf? Yeah, wolf. And I go, yeah. It was funny. I heard a story. There's an actor in LA that's had some, good jobs, fame, and, and a little bit of fame. And he was talking to a girl at a bar one night, and and it was a friend of mine, and he told her, he goes, yeah, they wanted me for that character Wolf, but I was too busy. And it's like, they didn't want you for, I made Wolf up. Like, he had long hair and everything. We looked similar, but it was just like, dude, it's like, I came up with that character, and like everything about that character I came up with, because as soon as I thought of Wolf, I thought of, okay, how would a wolf act? How, so like first night when I came running into the gauntlet, I just started pacing back and forth, because it was this gauntlet and then it had sides, that was like a cage. And so, I just started pacing back and forth like if I was a wolf that had gotten trapped. And, so it just kind of went from there.
I've been blown away. Like I've read Dan Nitro's book, but I know ESPN's doing the documentary coming out with American Gladiators and all that, and I'm just blown away. Like part of my childhood was watching all the reruns, and then as I got older, I got to watch your version with Mike O'Hearn and all those guys, and Joy, and I'm just blown away that not to sound corny, but it's just so cool to like as a child see it, and then as I get older to really appreciate. Like it's funny to see when people get knocked off the perch and the trash talking, but
Right.
the injuries and the injuries, not only injuries you guys have sustained and what you do for the roar of the crowd, but the impact that your involvement in the show has had on people that have these memories and these. It's a reflection of the good times when I think we could all sit back on a Sunday night 8 p.m. and watch this, as
Yeah.
opposed to what you do now. It's just like everything is just theater, but the wrong kind.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, I was very fortunate to between first and second season, and after second season, I still did a lot of appearances as Wolf. But I would go to these, World Wheels car shows, myself and Venom, and we would sign autographs for 4 hours and get to meet the public. And so many of these, fathers and mothers were coming up to us and they were like, "Oh my God, this was my favorite show as a kid." And, now sitting on the couch with my child, watching this, it takes them back to their childhood, but they're getting to share it with their new, their child. So it's like, and it's like every 10, 15 years, it's like, because they're talking about bringing it back again now. And so it'll be a whole new generation, and that generation will be sharing it with their kids. And so it's been a really cool thing, and to hear these stories of people and how it's brought their family, not like their family was
Right.
horrible and separated and we brought them back together, but the family would sit and watch it together like I did, with my mom and
Yep.
stepdad and everything. It's like, it's really cool to just hear that from other people.
I want to transition into your singing career. And I've read before where you have this deep admiration towards the outlaw country, the Merle Haggards, the Johnny Cash, the Chris Christophersons.
Yes.
That version of country that was they're poets, right? And how important is it for you to not only etch your own type of your career in the music world, but to kind of give homage to those musicians and singers and bands that really paved the way for you?
Well, I mean, that's the thing that I love about good country music is it was stories. And like you said, they were poets, they were so clever in their writing. And like I always talk to people and I tell them about, the song Mama Tried. um Merle writes, there's a lyric in there where he says, I reached into the glove box, another liquor store went down. And it's like, he never said the word gun.
Right.
He never said I went and shot somebody. He never, like, it wasn't, it was just, as soon as he said I reached into the glove box, another liquor store went down, you knew what he meant. He was broke, he was needing to make some money, and he grabbed his gun and he went in and he robbed a liquor store. It's like, it was just such clever writing, and they told stories, and it wasn't just about, what you going to do with all that ass, like, it's, and I mean, not to say there's anything wrong with, music is great. All music is great. Like, there's, the new country, man, I'll tap my foot to it. I'll sit there. I mean, it's good. There's some that I'm like going, you know, great choruses, but why this? Great beat, but why? What? It's like, but the Outlaws, one, they told great stories. Two, they were being told not to do the music the way they were doing it. And that's why they were called the Outlaws, because they were like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, I'll find my own niche. And they did. And not only did they find their own niche, but they built into these huge mega stars, that are still talked about today, that are still mentioned in new songwriters write songs and mention, those guys. They're iconic. And so I want to go along those lines. I want to do things my way. I want to mix, Merle Haggard with Aerosmith. It's like, because I'm a rocker, I'm a blues guy. I grew up on Elvis. I grew up wanting to be Elvis, and so a couple of years ago, I went out to Nashville for, 3-4 weeks, and just went to bars that I've never been to. I went to the outskirt bars and, just different places to hear different songwriters and kind of find my, who I am as a songwriter and as a singer and as an artist. And and I noticed that the stuff that I liked most was more blues based. Randy Houser is a great singer songwriter, and he's a friend of mine, and he's very blues based, and so I realized I'm more of a rocker blues, but I love the stories of the old school country guys like Merle and Waylon, and I'm like, so I need to figure out how to mash all that together, and that'll be my sound. Not that I'm trying to make a different sound. I just want to be true to who I am as an artist, and so I'm constantly, trying to get better at guitar. I'm trying to write new songs, and I work with different people rather than work with the same singer songwriters. I work with different guys so that I get different feels of different, because I don't want to sound the exact same. I know that helps because people can identify you, but I want people to go, "Oh, who's this? Holy crap, that's Hollywood too. Wow, I didn't know he could do that."
When you're having a bad day in terms of trying to like stay creative, or whether it's writing or just creating anything, what do you kind of do to kind of reset your mind and get ready to finish what your task was?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Because I have bad days. I've had bad weeks where all I want to do is sleep. I don't want to get out of bed. I want to hide from the world. And that's the thing. Everybody goes through stuff, and I know a lot of people think, well, yeah, but you're blessed, I am blessed. um but I've struggled my whole life. I've been told that I wouldn't be good at this or that. I mean, pretty much everything I've ever done, I was told I wouldn't be able to do it. And I just, man, I find that a challenge, when people say that. But to kind of reset myself, I talk to God, a lot. And especially if I'm really that down and that kind of stuck in my place, I'll just come in here into my office, and just be like, you know, God help me, like I am trying everything I can, and I'm struggling, and I don't know what to do. So you know what? It's in your hands. And usually when I do that, like, I mean, there's been times where I've been so broke and I don't know how I'm going to pay the next bills and this and that, especially like even after Gladiators, I made a lot of money doing that show, but it was when everybody else was going broke. It was the big crash. And so I literally was throwing money. I mean, I'm giving money to people, trying to help them stay afloat, because I'm like, I'll get a third season. I'm the star of the show. I'm going to be able to get $1 million next year. And then they call and they go, well, we got canceled. And I'm like, oh, wait, what? I'm like, I just gave all my money away, but I have those days where I'm so broken, so just lost, and like, I don't know what, and I literally turn it over to God. And that afternoon, like I was doing a charity golf tournament, and I had a notice come on my phone that I was down to like the last $100 on my credit card. I knew that I had $3,000 in bills coming up, and I'm just going, oh, and I was like, oh, well, God help me. And I went back to playing golf for this charity tournament. And that afternoon, I get a call from a lady saying, hey, you still have your real estate license? My son's looking for a house. And I sold him a house the very next week. And so my commission came in, and I took care of all the problems that was not me. I didn't go out and try to, like, I had been hustling, trying to find work, but once I gave it into God's hands, man, it just, so that's basically kind of how I reset myself, is I get back to, who I am, and to my faith, and then everything usually seems to work out.
Fans that obviously follow this podcast know I'm very open about my faith, and I have a strong conviction towards God, or I get mad at God and stuff like that. We don't have to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about that per se, but to go back to the singing, what I loved again about the Cashes and the Highwayman, the Christophersons, is that every time they sang a song or every time they spoke, you knew they feared God
Oh yeah.
and all this stuff. I think that's what's missing in music today, where it's especially country, where it's like, yeah, sing about the dirt roads, sing about the beer on the front porch. Like those are
Right,
all great times. I get that,
right.
but there is, I don't know. It's just so tough to like not. nitpick what's currently going on in country, because there are other musicians like yourself that are trying. There's like a Zach Bryan out there,
Yeah.
a bunch of guys like that. They're just really writing these really powerful songs that you know what they're talking about, but they're just not saying
Right.
specifically on taking pills or whatever.
Right.
And I just wish it could go back to that, because those memories growing up, like hearing my grandparents talk about the
Yeah.
Patsy Clydes and all this stuff, where it's like these are real powerful
Right.
musicians.
And I think it is heading back that way, because I think the world has been in such a mess, that I think people are trying to find, like where did we go wrong? And so I think people are starting to get back to God, and they're starting to get back to real life stuff, like this is the greatest and worst invention ever in the history. The internet is amazing, but it's like this is horrible. And if I wasn't, using it to build a fan base and to try to get out there to people and to try, it's like I would have a flip phone, or I would just have a phone on my wall back here
Yeah.
that I could grab and pull that long cord over and, dial. And, it's like, I think about, when I first started my career, I traveled. I would leave my house at the end of January, get home at the end of October. And I would have to pull into a gas station, get a bunch of quarters, put it in a payphone, check my voicemail, and then once I got my voicemails, and I would write it all down, and the people that called, then I would get more quarters and put them in and make those callbacks, and then I would drive. And I wouldn't hear from anybody for 6 to 8 hours, because I was in a truck driving down the road, and it's like I miss that. And so a lot of times when I'm driving now, I don't have the radio on. I'll turn my phone off and I just drive, and I actually think. And you know what? That's the way I reset myself. Now that I'm talking about this, when I get really, really lost, and my wife knows this about me, because I used to have 2 nervous breakdowns a year. And so when I start to get where I'm really kind of getting lost in life is, and I talk to God during this, but I get in my truck and I drive. Like I'll go, you know what, I have to run to LA, or I got to go to Vegas, or I'm going to go to Texas and see my friend. And that way I'm, 18 hours in a car by myself, and I can clear my head, and I can, and it's like usually by the time I get somewhere, I have settled all the world's problems. I've, booked, 5 or 6 new shows. It's like, so, um, but yeah, it's just that thing. And so people are getting back to that. I think, and the music is starting to go back that way. You got a bunch of great artists out there that are just starting to hit mainstream, like Cody Jinks and Cody Johnson's great. I sent him a song and was hoping that he would record it, and as of right now they're not. But then you got other guys that a lot of people haven't heard of, like Ray Scott. That is a great songwriter. He's written a lot of songs for some big stars. He just hasn't really, Bridget Tatum, she's got probably one of the biggest songs ever written in the history of country music, and that's She's Country by Jason Aldean. Bridget is a great songwriter, and she's a great singer, and she's gorgeous. It's like how that girl does not, have a career, like Carrie Underwood, I don't know, because she's phenomenal, and she's an outlaw. She's an outlaw writer. She writes I have 4 songs basically on hold from her that I want to do from one of my next albums, because she is such an incredible writer. We did a show together in Nashville where I sang one of the songs that I'm going to put on an album called Slow Moving Country. And she came up afterwards and gave me a big hug and was like, thank you for singing that the way it's supposed to be sung, and
Yeah.
and that melted my heart, because as a songwriter, you write songs, and then you give them to producers or something, and somebody else does them, and they're not like what what you wrote, or they don't have the feeling that you wrote, and it's different. Jeffrey Steele is a great singer songwriter that he's written probably more number ones than anybody in Nashville. He wrote What Hurts the Most by
Oh wow.
uh, I can't think of the name of the
Okay.
band right now.
Oh, Rascal
Gary,
Flats.
yeah, I was gonna say
Yep.
Gary Laveau and Don, Joe Don, but Rascal Flats, and it's a great song the way that they did it. But to hear him sing it with the emotion and the power that he has, and it's like, oh my God, it's just amazing. Look it up. What Hurts the Most, Jeffrey Steele, uh, Nashville River front, and you'll see what I mean, because it's amazing the way he sings it and the emotion in it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the more, a lot of these new artists that are coming up and writing some amazing stuff.
As we transition now into this rodeo bullfighting career you have, I've never met anyone that actually actively does this. I've watched a ton of it. I've had the privilege to see this performed in Spain. I've always wanted to see the running of the bulls. But so, how does someone like you, with your upbringing, get involved in this to the point where your mom's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Well, I was raised around horses my whole life. Honestly, I I was training my young life. I was going to be a jockey. My grandfather had race horses, and I was really small, really skinny. Like my freshman year of high school, I was 5 foot tall and like 90 pounds. So I was training to be a jockey. That's what I thought I was going to do. And then when I was 15, some buddies of mine in high school were riding bulls out at this practice pen, and they knew that I trained horses and was around horses. So they were like, "Hey, you want to ride bulls?" And I was like, "Nah," and they're like, "Ah, you're the perfect size." And I'm like, "Nah, but being a rodeo clown would be kind of cool." And so I went out and just started, doing it, to protect those guys. And I was horrible at it. My athletic ability, got me around the bulls. I didn't get hit, but I didn't I wasn't good at slowing down and keeping the bull with me. So guys were still getting hooked. So for I think the first couple of years, people hated seeing me show up to fight bulls because it just didn't click. And then after watching and watching and watching tapes and different things, it's like it finally clicked, and I got very good at it. Again, this was one of the things that I was told: you're never going to be good at this. You might as well quit. You might as well go home. And it was the first thing athletically that I was ever told I wouldn't be good at, because I was, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, you name it, I played it. And I was always on the all-star teams. I was chosen to play on the United States Little League team in Japan against the Japanese for the Little League World Series. Like they only chose like 40, US kids out of the entire country. So this was something that, it's like, okay, wait a second. How am I this great athlete, but not great at this? And so it kept my attention, and I just, I wanted to get great at it, and I did. And I've been very fortunate to have a 37-year career doing this. And I've been all over the country. It got me, it's kind of how I started transitioning into TV and film, was doing stunt work, with bulls and horses and stuff. And so, it's been such a great career for me that it's something I will always do. My goal right now is to get back to the national finals again in the barrel. I've been to the national finals in the Wrangler bullfights in the barrel. I've been there in the Wrangler bullfights as a bullfighter. Now I want to go back in the barrel to protect the bull riders. If I do, that'll, have put me at the NFR in 3 different positions. There's only been, one other guy that's been there and more than 2. And there's only been 4 of us that have been there in 2 in the history of rodeo. So it's like I still have my goals. I still want to win Coors Man in a Can, Clown of the Year. Like I still have my goals in rodeo. So I'm going to continue to do that. I'm trying to book rodeos as the rodeo clown barrel man, and then book my band afterwards for the after party, and that way I pick up a double paycheck, but 2, I build that rodeo fan base, with the music.
What's the story behind the different face paint? Because I know over the years you've kind of changed it up, but you've had the specific look. Is this something where you pick day of show where you're kind of like, hey, I'm gonna do yellow and blue? Like, how does that
No,
work?
my makeup is always the same. My makeup has been the same since, day. It has changed just a little, like because when I first, started putting makeup on, I didn't, I basically did the yellow and then I did the blue.
Right.
and the red nose. But then when I started working with like Ronnie and Donnie Sparks, their makeup was so crisp and clean and everything. And I was like looking at theirs and I was like, oh, they outline theirs. So then I started doing the yellow, and I would outline the yellow with black, and then I would put the blue around that and then outline the blue with the black. That way it just was a crisper, cleaner look. But yeah, my makeup has been the same for 37 years. And it's just something that, and I basically drew my face on a piece of paper and I Xerox copied a whole bunch. And then I started drawing different shapes, of things. And I finally came up with the shape that I like. And then I started, doing different colors. And I've, just finally realized I like blue and yellow. And so that's been my face for, 37 years. And it's a deal where I kind of, in rodeo, it's not as, don't do makeup like that other guy, or that, but most people try to stay away. It might be a variation, but with the circus clowns, like they register their faces. They have specific looks, and and I've never registered my face, but when I started studying clowns, I studied circus clowns. And so I studied how they did their makeup. And so like, that's the thing, like most rodeo clowns probably couldn't even tell you what their face is. Like if you go, what kind of makeup is yours? They're going to be like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm a rodeo clown. It's like, I can tell you I'm an August clown. There's the hobo clown, there's the August there, there's several different types of clown. And depending on what that clown is, kind of depends on how your act is as well. Lisa Harris, hobo clown, and was probably the greatest rodeo clown ever. Like he was funny. He could fight bulls and barrel man, but I mean his humor was amazing. He was a great writer. He wrote for Hee Haw. I mean, it's funny. I was skimming through his autobiography book. And as I'm skimming through it, I'm looking at everything and I'm reading, I'm like going, holy shit, this guy is me before me, and I went over to him, I'm like, Lisa, I didn't realize, he was a drummer at Sun Studios.
Wow.
During the time that Cash and Elvis and all those guys were there. He was an actor. He was in Walking Tall. He worked with Burt Reynolds. He was a stunt guy. He was a rodeo clown. Like, I'm a musician. I'm going, Lisa Harris was Hollywood before Hollywood was Hollywood. It's really cool, and I was glad that Lisa and I became good friends.
With someone like you that's widely recognized, not only in the sport of the rodeo and music and all the other stuff, when it comes to like a group like PETA or someone that looks at bullfighting or horse racing or whatever whatever the animal sport is, does that ever affect you to the point where it's like, do they understand why I'm doing this or what the sport is? Like I've talked to horse owners, and like the stories they say of like PETA, these animal activist groups that target, like, how do you deal with that? And especially in the last 30 so years when you are basically one of the faces of the sport.
Right. I don't deal with them. They don't understand. You're not going to make them understand.
Right.
There are just people in life that they want to have their opinion, and they're going to shut their ears and open their mouths. That's all they're going to do. And they're going to just, continue yelling at the top of their lungs, even though the things that they're saying, they have nothing to back it up. They have nothing that they really understand. Like I hear, people from PETA, say, well, they're tying their balls up. No, they're not. Well, they're doing this. No, they're not. It's like they don't understand. And if I have somebody that starts talking like that, I'm like, hey, you want to come to the rodeo with me? I will show you everything about the rodeo so that you better understand the sport. And I will, explain to you how strong these animals are. And, like with bulls and horses and, these people are spending, and horse racing, I mean, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on one animal to be a great, bucking bull or a racehorse or, so do you think that these people are really going to do horrible, nasty, abusive things to their hundreds of thousands of dollars into this animal, that could potentially hurt them to where they can't perform. No, it's like, would you, as a person, would you spend that kind of money on something and then try to
On a
break it?
car, you just throw a
Yeah.
rock at the windshield.
And then throw rocks at the windshield and hit it with a baseball bat. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. It's like, especially if that car could potentially make you $1 million next week by selling it or by modeling it, or it's like,
Right.
and that's where these people, it's like they just want to scream. They just, it's like they want to be heard. And the thing is, they don't. Why do they want to be heard? It's like they don't even know what it's like they just, everybody wants a cause. It's like, why don't you make your cause having a better life, be a happier person? And so I don't deal with them. I've walked into rodeos and there's picket lines or whatever, and I just walk right by and just laugh at them, because I'm like, whatever. I learned a long time ago, and I tell this to people, like, because with my comedy, I'm very edgy with my comedy. I was told once that you can go up to a line in comedy, but you don't step over it. And they go, but you somehow jump over it and then you get back without getting into trouble. And I go, well, it's because they expect worse. I go, they expect so much worse from me. I go, they expect me to walk out and be Andrew Dice Clay in a family venue. I said, and when I don't go Dice Clay, they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I go, but yeah, I do get complaints. I've had people write letters and everything, but like I've had 1 or 2 or 3 people write a letter at a rodeo where there was 10,000 people. So what? I don't care. It's like, I'm going to tell my comedy, and I'm not going to change my comedy. I'm not going to stay away from politics. I'm not going to stay away from, gay jokes or black jokes, or, now I'm very selective on how I do them. Like I used to work with Leon Coffey or Dwayne Hargo a lot. So what I would do was I would use some kind of racially humor that wasn't bad, but what it did was it opened the door for them to now come back on me and make me the butt of the joke. Right. And so it worked great. It's like we had so much fun doing it, because as I would start into it, the crowd would kind of go, oh, because they're looking at him like, how's he going to take this? And then when he would, take it in a way where he would go, wait, what? And then he would go off on me and show how stupid I was for the comment that it's like, then the crowd would, applaud, so it's like, you have to do it right, but comedy is subjective. Comedy is just comedy. And that's the thing that, it's like nowadays, people are like, they get so, but it's like, the joke is not about you, people. It's like, I didn't sit there and go, I think Bob Stuperdoo is going to be at the rodeo next week in Iowa. I'm going to write a joke to piss off Bob. It's like, the joke's not about you. It's like, the joke is just about a situation. And if you are taking it personally, then you're stupid. It's like one of the rodeo clowns I know, he always says, he goes, if you get offended by what I say, just remember this: you were triggered by a clown. It's like, I'm an idiot. I'm out here being an idiot, and you're getting mad at an idiot, that's just making jokes. I was telling somebody at the gym the other day, I go, I don't change my comedy for anybody. I do what I do. I go, I am Beige Chappelle, like, it's like, and people, hey, we've had people in rodeo jump the fence, now not out of anger, I don't think. Liesl Harris, he was 64, I think, at the time, and he's doing his rodeo clown act with his robot, and a drunk jumped over the fence, ran over, tackled the robot, and then got up and went to run, and 64-year-old Liesl Harris ran him down, tackled him, and beat the living snot out of this guy right there in the arena in front of the crowd, and he got a standing ovation. Awesome. And it's like that's, I'm talking with a buddy right now about, I'm going to start probably doing some stand-up comedy, and that way it just will help my chops in a rodeo arena, with writing new jokes and stuff. And I'm like, please, somebody come up on stage and try to hit me. I will turn this comedy stage into the American Gladiator arena, and I will beat the living snot out of somebody, because it's like, I don't play games. Like, I have fun with life, but if you try to interrupt my
Right.
act and you try to physically harm me, I've never lost a fight ever in my life. Not because I'm tough, because I'm that scared of what you might do to me if I allow you to beat me up. So I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen.
Part of me kind of wants that to happen, but I also don't want your act. Yeah. So you kind of mentioned some new albums and stuff coming up. So before I let you go, like if people want to pick up your music, where's it streaming, go to your website, like what's projects you have coming up?
Well, I've got a full album on iTunes that I have no control over. I don't even think I make any money on it anymore. But it's good music. It's really good music. So, and I only wrote one of the songs on there. Chris Cornell wrote one of the songs on there. Jeffrey Steele wrote one. Randy Houser wrote one. Keith Anderson wrote one. I've got great writers on this. But it's an amazing album and I love it. So please go get it because I think you'll enjoy it. If you like good country music. I also have 2 on Spotify right now that I wrote. One is Ghost, one is Get Loud. I've got another one that I'm actually waiting on artwork right now from a girl that's called Wolves on the Town. I wanted to write a song that, was kind of a party anthem about going out with the wolf and, drinking and having fun. And then I've got another one that I had finished recording, but I've got a whole bunch of new songs that I've written. One is actually kind of about suicide. And it's the first song I ever wrote completely by myself, wrote the music, like I sat here with a guitar and I found a melody and I wrote this song and I just wrote another song the other day that, it usually takes me with help 3-4 hours to write a song or maybe a few days to write a song. And I wrote this song the other day in less than an hour and it was really cool. So I got to get in and get those recorded, but I'll start getting more stuff on Spotify over the next year. I've got a whiskey business that I just am starting up. I'm just working on my distributorship right now. I've got a meeting next week here in Arizona with Crescent Crown and then Breakthrough Beverage in Nevada. Here, I'll show you. That's my new whiskey. And so I'm just getting that all lined out and then hopefully we'll get that out across the country soon. That's Radio Rockstar.
No, I love it. This has been awesome, Hollywood. I appreciate your time on here, and I wish you all the success. I don't want any stage jumpers.
Me
but
either.
I wish you all the success. Be healthy, be safe, and thank you for this.
Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you what you do for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat, and I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you.